All right, take a minute, just look at what is before you, and know that yes, this is Adventure Camping, Tactical Nut speaking to you, but this is going to be a different kind of knife review, one that I've wanted to bring to the table for quite some time, but really didn't know how. Why do you ask? Well, I'll tell you. This is a channel that's typically for people that are just getting into the outdoors, just getting into knives or gear, and they need stuff that's good, it's functional, it's high value, but budget friendly. Well, this, my friends, is not in that category. Well, what is it, do you ask? Well, this is Damascus steel. Now, in case you're not familiar with what Damascus is, it is a combination typically of two different steels. They will be hammer forged together and then folded over and over. Typically, the more folds that it has, the higher quality you get. And then, of course, the different blade designs and stuff that you can get out of it. Now, this one itself is made from a 1095 and a 15N20. Now, I know most people are familiar with 1095 as a very high quality steel, but the 15N20, if I'm not mistaken, is typically made, people can make saw blades with. But let me just go ahead and go over a few specs on the knife, and then we'll kind of get to more talking about who this is for and why. Alright, well now this blade is 4.5 inches long, but you only have about 3.5 inches of cutting edge. It does have Damascus steel bolsters. The handle scales are made of a buffalo horn with brass pins. And as you can see here, I'll bring it up, this one does have a nice little like star design in it. It's about 8.5 inches overall in length. One of the things that I really think about, that I love about Damascus steel is, as you can see by the back here, let me see if I can get a little more contrast up close. Alright, that's just not color, those are actually divots into the steel, but just to me makes it an incredibly cool look. This is the, as you can tell here, drop point design and a saber grind. That this has become, to me, in my opinion, a functional piece of art. This is why I love this type of steel so much, is that yes, it functions, it can do all the stuff that you need, but at the same time, it's just beautiful to look at. It's beautiful, it's, feels great to hold. Which will kind of lead me to ergonomics. This, even though, yes, it is buffalo horn, it's very smooth. But I'll tell you what, I mean, yeah, I could have G10, micarta, something like that on there that would be a little more grippy, but I have not found a need to do so because it has been so comfortable. The fit and finish on is excellent. There's no hot spots, no squared corners. As you can see, perfectly rounded, full tang design and construction. I mean, it's just been exceeding all of my expectations. Now, I'd used it quite a bit in the outdoors for a while when I first got it, but it's kind of been relegated to collector status for me. Now, if you know me, you know that I am more of a knife user than I am a collector. Because for me, if I'm going to spend my hard-earned money, it's going to be on something that I could use every day. Typically not something that I'm going to put in a frame or in a safe or somewhere stashed away where it's, just to be looked at on occasion or whatever. If it's my money, I want to put it to use. But there's a lot of people out there that really don't mind spending the extra money to get something just to have as a collectible, or to have something, they take out on special occasions, or, whatever. And I'm typically not that guy. But with this one, I've come to love it so much, and that as far as my channel goes, since it doesn't really fit into what we normally do here, this one to me is just going to become part of a collection that eventually I'll pass down to baby Glock, and hopefully one day to her kids and so on, because this is of heirloom quality. I mean, I don't even know how much to just really emphasize on how nice and how much I really like this knife. Now, who is this knife for? Well, for me, my personal opinion, knives like this are typically not for your people that are just getting into the outdoors, that are just getting into either knife use, knife collecting, because these are definitely on the pricey side. Now, if you're the kind of person that has a lot of money and you want to have the best of everything and you don't mind spending it, even if you're not used to using stuff like this, then by all means, go ahead. It's your money. I will never criticize somebody for how they spend their money because it's theirs. But for me, personally, let's just say somebody's new, they've just, maybe been in the outdoors for a year or less, or they come to me and say, hey, what kind of knife should I get? I'm never going to point them in this direction to start with. As cool as they are to use, if you purchased one and then got into the outdoors and realized you didn't like the outdoors that much, you didn't use it as much as you thought, or even depending on what you get, you just didn't like using it as much. It wasn't as comfortable as you thought. That's a lot of money thrown down the drain. I mean, yes, you can sell these, but you're looking at time spent trying to find a buyer, potentially not getting the money that you spent on it. Yes, and there's a lot of knives out there that you could get more than even what you paid, but that's a risk you're going to take when buying it. So for me, what I tell people is, hey, start at your budget line. There's a tremendous number of high-value, budget-friendly steels out there and knives that are just amazing to use, will do everything you need them to, but won't break the bank doing it. But if you're the type of person that uses a knife every day, that you're in the outdoors a lot, this may be right up your alley. I mean, this is, kind of the pinnacle of knife collecting in some respects, is going the custom route. Because this time you get, you can talk to, depending on where you go, you can talk to the knife maker, tell them exactly everything you want, how you wanted it, what you want it made out of, everything exactly the way you want it, not some production line, every one of them looks the same and 900 people have the same knife. This you can get a one of a kind that you can pull out and all your friends can ooh and ah and go, wow, because they're never going to get one like it. And, that's a kind of a cool factor, but at the same time, I mean, look at it. Look at that blade. To me, that is just sick. It's just, to look at it, it is gorgeous. It makes me want to buy a folder with Damascus steel, which there's plenty out there as well, and I'm sure I'm going to at some point. But for now, I'm happy with using, handling, just having this. It really fulfills the needs of anything you want to do outdoors. This is only limited by its size. If the blade length were longer, there's a lot more camp tasks and hunting tasks that you could do with it. But for now, you could skin with it. I've batoned smaller pieces of wood with it, shaved, carved. It'll do, food prep if you want it to. You just got to remember that when you take a knife like this into the outdoors, this isn't coated like most blades are, so it will rust on you, so you got to keep it oiled. So this one I do take out and I oil every so often just to make sure nothing happens to it. And it's been fantastic. Now the only thing with custom knives that's kind of a downside, in my opinion, are the sheaths. This one I got to come with it simply because I wanted something to put it in. A lot of custom knife makers will kind of either not have a sheath whatsoever, or you'll have to pay a decent amount extra for a good quality leather sheath or a good quality Kydex sheath. For me personally, I just really wanted something to put it in. I wanted to spend my money on the knife more so than the sheath. And eventually I may get a higher quality leather sheath for it or a Kydex sheath. More than likely I'll stick with leather because I think it just goes with the look and the buffalo horn better. But for me, this was kind of more just something they would throw in order to have it something to hold it in when you're using it. As you can see, it is really thick, heavy-duty leather. For the knife itself, it does have a belt loop retention strap with a snap on it. But all in all, not something that would impress your friends, so to speak. So, to me, the focus is on this. So with most custom knife makers, the focus is on the blade as well. One thing you will have to remember, if you decide to go the custom route and you really want to spend the money and the time you have to remember. most custom knife makers have a pretty long wait list, between the time you order and the time you receive your blade. I mean, you're looking at sometimes 3 months, 6 months, a year, sometimes a year and a half, depending on the knife designer and how much in demand they are and the type of knife that you want. But I just really had to bring this to the table because I know, yes, this doesn't really fit our channel, but this is a knife that I love. It's awesome. It's going to be one of the rare things that I go and I put away and don't use very often and then pass down just to keep it in the family and to, help Babe Glock eventually get into higher end knives. Because using a higher end knife, I'll go ahead and say this outright before I end the video, it's like a difference between driving an old beat up car that you got when you were first 16 and got your driver's license to stepping into a $70,000 sports car, right? You liked the car that you had while you had it. Yeah, it was kind of rough around the edges and, definitely wasn't the perfect automobile to be driving. But when you stepped into that, really nice, really expensive sports car, you kind of just fall in love and you're like, yeah, this is exactly what I love, But then one day you have to eventually get back into the old beat-up car that you were driving because you couldn't afford it. Then you kind of like your car just a little bit less. You kind of pick on it a little bit more because you're like, man, I remember what it was like to, drive the better car. Knives are the same way, I use the Benchmade barrage that I have. I've been using a lot of budget steels. A lot of them, they're awesome. They're extremely functional. They're easy on the wallet. The edge retention is great. But once I use that Benchmade, and you see just how much longer that edge retention is, the fit and finish, the feel of it, you're like, wow, I kind of got to go back to the budget blades again. And you're kind of looking down a little bit on those budget blades. And so, that's completely natural. I would expect it from anyone. And so if you're just getting into knives, yes, starting at the top would be awesome. But at the same time, in my opinion, get to know the hobby first. Get to know how to handle these kind of knives. This one would require a lot more maintenance than a regular, coated blade that's at a cheaper price point. Because if you didn't get into the outdoors and now you got to get rid of that expensive knife, you may lose money, you may lose a lot of time, you may not, but at the same time, really good introductory knives. There's plenty of them. They're awesome. They do everything that you want. But for you heavy-duty guys that just really like to use knives, that are really into the outdoors, or that just have the money to really be collectors, this is your guy. All right. Well, if you have any questions about these kind of knives, if you have any questions about Damascus steel, please feel free to leave comments below. Please, if you have any experience using custom knives or Damascus steel knives, add those in there as well. I think people would like to see kind of a discussion on something like this. I highly encourage it. I do recommend this kind of knife, but at the same time, price points, they're going to vary by designer, and they're always going to be on the upper end scale. So I'll leave that choice up to you. But for me, just one last look. It's just gorgeous. In the meantime, be prepared and have fun.